So my name's Roisin. I'm a solicitor RWK Goodman in Bath, and I also sit on counsel for Bristol Law Society. So I'm here today representing Bristol Law Society, who've put on this wonderful webinar with Schroders. We are recording the webinar, so you'll be able to obtain a copy of the slides probably towards the end of this week or early next week. And you should be able to watch the video again on YouTube from that point as well. If you've got any questions, and we do really encourage questions, we've allowed about 10 minutes for those at the end, please pop them in the Q&A box. That just means that your question is anonymous. And when I read those out at the end, I will do so anonymously. So please feel free to ask any questions. Nothing is too silly or trivial. And often people have quite specific questions because it will relate to a very specific situation they themselves are considering. So yeah, specific is fine as well. General's fine. Just anything that you think of really throughout the talk, pop it in the Q&A. We're very fortunate today to be joined by three fantastic individuals from Schroders. So we have Rebecca Tregarthen, who's going to do most of the talking today, and then James Shiner and Chris Iles, who may join in with some of the niche questions that we might get. So I want to just give it another minute before I hand over to Rebecca. But just to say, this is a wonderful talk to join. Really important issue. I know that we have sort of all of the client issues at the front of our minds, and you know, a career progression and lots of different things that just seem to be the driving considerations in a normal week. But it's really important to think about finances and to have an early eye on that. And I think that's something that will probably be stressed quite a lot throughout today's talk. So if we can hand over now to Rebecca. Rebecca is Strategic Partnership Development Manager at Schroders, and she will introduce herself and the rest of the team now. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Roisin. Great to be with you all today. We very much enjoy doing these BLS sessions. I think what's so important is that BLS are a driving force for the local legal scene, and to be part of that is really quite something we very much enjoy. So I'm delighted to be here and joined by two of my team from Schroders Personal Wealth. They're local here in Bristol. I've got James Shiner, who in fact is going to do quite a lot of the speaking. I'm going to try not to do much speaking, but James is one of our advisor team, and Chris Iles is also one of our advisor team. He's in Downend and James is in Redland, so very, very local. They combine with them lots of experience around the advisory world. So if we could have the slides up, and we'll get going on those. I just wanted, while I've got the floor, I just wanted to give you a little bit of introduction into what we're going to be talking about today. Roisin's very nicely placed that, but in terms of who we are and where we are, we come with quite a bit of heritage. If you haven't heard of us before, I know I speak to several of you on the circuit, as it were. We've got Schroders PLC on one side and Lloyds Banking Group on the other. And they, I suppose, as our parents, give us that surety and heritage. And we've got advisors across the country, but very importantly, we've got local advisors to help as many as possible within that idea of getting a financial plan in place. Next slide, please, James. That financial plan is absolutely at the heart of what we do. We believe that a financial plan is the bedrock, if you like, and the foundation of anything you're trying to achieve. Now, you all will be at a certain stage in your career, and you'll be intent on furthering your career. You might be thinking about buying your first house. You might be looking at even, the idea of partnership within the company you're working in. You're looking at spreading your wings, getting your career bricks in place. And it's really important for you to have a financial plan, not just for your career, but also as we find ourselves in turbulent times, the financial plan gives you the cut through and the path that you can follow through all the turmoil that we're facing, cost of living increases, inflation worries, all these different things. And what James and Chris will do today is just pinpoint a few of those ideas for you. So next slide, James, please. the most important thing I'm going to stress as my last little bit is that we mustn't think that money is the most important driver. It's not how much you have, it's how much in control you are of that money. And by being in control, it gives you freedom and it allows you to prioritize what's important to you at your stage now and for the stages ahead. So we're going to delve into this in this session, hopefully giving you some practicalities and some takeaways as well. And we have a journey to cover. We're all building wealth. We're all working towards that point of retirement, whenever that's going to be. And from retirement, we find ourselves ensuring that we've got enough money and assets to be able to look after us after that retirement point. We all have an end game, we all have an end point, and these are the unavoidables, if you like, but it's how you look after yourself in the meantime that's just so important. And there are many questions to be answered. And in fact, some of those questions you can answer, you could ask later on in the session when James and Chris have finished, but tax, assets, investments, markets, ISAs, savings, all sorts of different things, they all come into play. So next slide. And the products and services that we can talk about are many and various. And I'm going to hand over to James first, bearing in mind all those different things there. And he will then start on his session, followed by Chris, and then we'll have Q&A after that.
Thanks, Rebecca. Good afternoon all. My name's James Shiner. As Rebecca kindly said, I'm a personal wealth advisor here at Schroders Personal Wealth. I'm based in Bristol, cover the Bristol and Bath area, so I appreciate there's a number of you in and around the southwest. What I'm going to do now really is spend some time looking at considerations regarding different stages of your life, looking at financial plan and how we tend to structure it with clients, and really the focus and the key areas that you need to be considering. Now, I understand that the demographic is a little younger in terms of career and life, so I will try to make it as relevant as possible, but I will touch upon all of the different stages. What could your financial life look like? Really, there's three real big stages in financial planning. There's the initial period of commitment. That's the early work in life. That's when you start to build a family, when you get your mortgage, you buy your first house. Now, there are a number of areas to be considering at this particular point, whether that is potentially investing in the firm and becoming a partner. From a specific and personal financial standpoint, no, priorities really are getting on the property ladder. Saving up that deposit and getting there, and then once you are on the property ladder, ensuring that you can continue that life. And what's a really important and one of the most important factors at this stage of somebody's financial life and working life is to make sure that they're fully protected, so that if anything were to happen to them, that their future isn't impacted. A good area to be considering at this stage as well is saving for your future and your retirement. A lot of people do leave retirement planning to a little bit later on, and I appreciate that pensions may not be the focus on a number of your minds right now, but it is important to look to maximize opportunities that you have and put money into the pension, as long as it's not really impacting the here and now. A great area to be looking at is to make sure that you're getting all of your employer contributions and maxing those out. So if you look at your pension schemes at work, your employer will pay a specific percentage of your salary. They will increase that based on your employee contributions. So making sure that that's maximised is a really good start to have. As you get a little bit later in life and you're in a period of growth stage, you may be a case of children starting to leave home, starting to go to university. You're starting to pay down on some of your debts and clearing off your mortgages. It's at that stage really that you can start to save more significantly for your future, whether that's in your in savings, investments, or pensions. And this is a real driving force behind getting ready for retirement. It's at this particular moment in time where you can start to put significant capital away for that retirement, which is the last stage, as you can see here, which is retirement, where a lot of people want to get to and really make sure that your lifestyle is not impacted and you have enough income and assets to be able to do all of the things you like. It's also at this stage you start to consider more about your estate and passing on generational wealth to your family and to your children. And that's really at that period of time, once your retirement is secure, that you can start to pass on that wealth over. Now, at Schroders Personal Wealth, what we do as advisors is we want to really understand what your goals and aspirations are. So there's 4 steps in terms of setting up and reviewing a client's plan. So we sit down with the clients, we consider what events they have and what aspirations and goals they want to be looking at. Then we really need to understand where they are today financially. And then from there, I'll understand if there's any potential need areas that we should be covering off. I'll write a report for a client detailing a financial plan, and it will come along with recommendations regarding products and services to really help clients meet their goals and aspirations. And we have a service of being able to review a client's plan with them on a regular basis, and we sit down with them annually to ensure that their plan continues to meet their needs on an ongoing basis. Now, the step 1 is really considering what objectives and aspirations and goals you have moving forward. Now, it can be a range of things. It could be getting married, it could be getting on the property ladder, it could be supporting children through university and school, it could be increasing your lifestyle so you have the ability to do more to enjoy yourself. There are a number of goals and aspirations that individuals have, and it's really important that both me and Chris really understand exactly what your goals and aspirations are. Once we've understood your goals and aspirations, we need to understand where you are from a financial perspective. What it states here is the income and over expenditure. Now, that's just one area of financial information that we need to get. We are holistic financial planners, so we look at all areas of financial advice, whether it is sort of considering kind of protecting your future, investing, protecting your family's future in inheritance tax planning, amongst a number of areas. If we're specifically looking at income and expenditure, as you can see on the screen here, one of the scenarios that we run through with clients is working out what money's coming in every month and what's going out. Now, if there is surplus, i.e. that there is money left over at the end of every month, that's where we can start to put some really concrete planning together. So whether it's a case of paying down debt, additional contributions to your pension, saving for your future, or putting money towards sort of protecting yourselves as individuals. If, for instance, and I know that there's significant concerns across the UK in terms of cost of living, and inflation hit 10.1% today, which is the highest it's been pretty much ever. So the cost of living is rising, and clients potentially may not have enough income on a monthly basis to cover all of their outgoings. It's really at that stage that we can support them about potentially reducing their outgoings or pass them on to various institutions and services that will help in terms of support, whether it's debt repayment. Once I have got a picture of your goals, your aspirations, and your financial future, what I'm able to do is use a cash flow modeling tool to start to really look into the coming years and later on into retirement. It's a really, really organic tool, which means I can put in a number of different scenarios. Essentially, what we do is we take all of your information from the here and now, we plug in your goals and aspirations for the future. And what the cash flow modeling tool does is it uses growth rates and inflation rates and asset classes rising over a period of time using calculations from thousands of different economic scenario assumptions. We use a third-party provider who are linked with Moody's, one of the largest credit reference agencies. So what it does is, based on what you're spending now and based on what we feel inflation is going to be and asset price and rises of cost of living is going to be longer term, we can see how your financial future looks, really starting to consider in one, whether you've got enough money for retirement. We can also look at areas if you weren't able to work, how it would impact your future. As you can see on the screen here, there's a number of different events at the top, whether it's university, children are going to or getting married, the dates that you plan to retire. On the actual cash flow model itself, along the left hand side, we've got total cash flow. So that's either the greater of the money coming in and the money going out. You can see on this example here that for the first 7 or 8 years, the employment income covers all of their needs, which is the black line. And then once they start to reduce their working hours and employment income reduces, it starts to show us what assets that they're going to need to utilize in the most tax efficient order. And it really plans it out all the way out until mortality, really, which is a good way. It's an assumptive tool. Actual returns obviously are materially different. However, it really gives us the opportunity to consider planning areas for you and to look into the future and to say, okay, I feel like you should be looking at this right now, because if you weren't able to work for whatever reason, it could impact when you want to retire, or potentially helping family members out, for instance. Skip the screen. So once we've understood the cash flow modelling, your financial position, your goals and aspirations, it's important for us to then structure the plan for you. And it really is in a priority order. The first priority for all clients, for ourselves, is to have a sufficient pot of capital to fall back on in the case of an emergency. We usually look at around about 6 months of expenditure. Whether or not you can't work for whatever reason, or there's a medical emergency or a specific family emergency, it is always important to have a pot of cash that you can draw down on instantly to cover that. Once that's in place, we then think it's the next area that you should be looking at is protecting yourself and your loved ones. So if anything were to happen from not being able to work or a medical perspective, you are in a position to still support your family and your loved ones moving forward. Once that is secure, we can then start to think about your short, medium and long-term saving needs. So if you are like me in your early 30s, it's important to understand that you can't necessarily put all of your money in pensions at this stage, because you can't access those until you're 57. So there needs to be a bit of a balance. So you could potentially start to look at maybe saving into ISAs and investments that way, into your cash savings, and also where there's money that you don't need over the medium term, over the next 20 years, can be put towards your pensions. Okay, because the likelihood is we might want to draw down on some of that capital over the next 20 years, whether it's to pay off mortgages, to support our lifestyle, to do all of the things that we want to in life. And then the last stage is, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit later on in life, you look to pass on your wealth to your family, and that's something that we'll likely address in another presentation. But that looks at areas such as making sure your will's in place, which is something you should all be doing really now, and then passing that estate over. And it also means that we do have conversations with parents and grandparents at this stage, and look to make sure that generational wealth is actually passed on, maybe within their lifetimes, rather than waiting for them to pass away. I'm going to pass over to Chris now. He's going to spend a little bit more time talking about just some actual specifics in terms of the products and the tax efficiencies of it, and then I'll come back a little later on. Chris.
Thanks very much, James. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chris Iles, Personal Wealth Advisor here at Schroders Personal Wealth. And in the next 10 minutes, what I'm going to look at in a little bit more detail is make a start with financial protection. We're then going to move on and look at saving versus investing, and the differences between both in a little more detail. And we'll then move on and look at something that we were discussing before we went live, actually, which is around the power of compound investing. Okay. Now we've seen the effectiveness that financial planning can have, as James has just highlighted there, the financial plan that you've seen in quite good detail, and addressing clients' various stages in life, whether it be helping children with education, with marriage, whatever it might be, and also looking forward to retirement, which is of course a consideration for many. That really is extremely powerful, and can really have a profound impact on our clients' lives, which is really rewarding. However, I think it's fair to say that that financial protection and the importance of it really does help to underpin that financial plan, because whilst it's really important to have the right money in the right place at the right time to support your objectives as they evolve and change throughout your lifetime, this can be scenarios whereby that those funds might need to be used to pay for something else. So some of these examples include, firstly, life insurance. So this kind of does what it says on the tin. It will pay your dependents a lump sum or regular income if you were to pass away. Now, for those of you with children, with spouses or partners, whatever it might be, thinking about having mortgages in place, and long-term cost of living help needed for children, this is really, really important. Okay. Critical illness, as we can see here, pays a lump sum or an income if you were diagnosed with a specific serious illness. So this might be to have those funds readily available to, to help cover any kind of cost that would be associated through not being able to work, or alternatively, perhaps, looking at making adaptations to the home to support any medical or health needs that might be needed at that point. So really important. Income protection. So this pays a percentage of your take-home pay, typically between 50 and 60%, if you can't work because you're ill or disabled. So, let's just say, for example, to the audience, if you were off work for 12 or 24 months, how would you meet your bills and cover your expenses? And of course, then, if you are lucky enough to have, cash reserves that you can draw on to, to fund that kind of, shortfall in terms of income not coming in, but expenses still in place, how would you feel about that potentially impacting your longer term plan? So if we go back to the financial plan we've looked at, would that perhaps have a knock-on impact on, buying your dream home or providing for your retirement in future? And these are really where we can start to look at things holistically and bring it all together. And lastly, as we can see here, mortgage protection. So that will cover your monthly mortgage, monthly loan, or credit card repayments in case of accident, illness, or unemployment. Next slide, please, James. Thank you. So we'll now move on just to look at saving and investing in a little more detail. And if we can hit the next slide, please. Fantastic. So this just gives us a very high level overview in terms of saving versus investing. So if we start with saving, this is really geared up towards those shorter term needs. Okay. So any planned spending probably in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, whether that might be a new car, funding towards a new home, or indeed, as James has alluded to, the importance of having around about 6 months of expenses in easily accessible emergency fund accounts. All right. Cash savings, tend to grow steadily. They've certainly improved in recent events, but I think the biggest risk here is the risk of inflation. Okay, so if the rate of return or interest on those savings is lower than inflation over the kind of longer term period, we'll see that the buying power of those funds will actually reduce. So whilst they possess minimal risk in terms of they're pretty safe and secure, the real kind of risk to highlight here is that actually they might be losing value in the longer term. Now, when we move on to look at investing, we can see that this is really looking to accumulate money for longer term goals. So those specific objectives that we'll understand with clients when working with them, and they can really vary quite broadly in terms of what it is that people are looking to achieve. But we would typically say, at least a kind of time horizon of 5 years. The objective, therefore, of course, is to grow in value. Okay, and generally, the higher risk nature of investments, the reward potentially is that there could be more at the end of the investment period than if you'd have left those funds in the bank. There are a very wide range in terms of options for investing, which we probably won't get to cover off in too much detail today, but we can in future. But it's important to be mindful of the accessibility of those funds because they're not all readily available, just like the savings are on the bank, as we've covered. Next slide, please. Thank you. And just touching on, I guess, the risk that comes with inflation, as I've just alluded to there. This slide really just looks at the real cost of your security and how inflation can erode the real value or future buying power of your savings in future. So this example just shows that you deposit 100,000 in the bank, which is by no means an insignificant amount of money. And we've assumed here that it earns 0.4% a year in interest, and inflation stays at 2% a year throughout this period. Effectively, what that means in real terms is that your money will buy 1.6% less with each passing year, and over 25 years, it would lose about 1/3 of its value, which is really quite significant. Now, although in terms of what it will show in the bank account, you know, it will show the 100,000 plus the interest that's been accruing every year. It's very safe. Will show a number that will grow slightly year on year. You know, that might be quite attractive, but I guess the real kind of limitation here is that what you can buy with it when you do look to access those funds, you know, in its relative kind of future value, is likely to fall over time, and that's a key risk when we think about you know, savings in general. Next slide, please. Thank you. And as we were kind of discussing before we went live today, yeah, a number of us were saying that we wish we'd started paying into pensions earlier. So this really just shows us the power of compound returns. Now, we've not given a specific investment for this, so it could be a pension, it could be an investment plan, but we've got a case study here looking at two individuals, Sarah and Joe. All right, so Sarah opens an account at age 22 and invests £2,000 per year for 10 years. The growth that's achieved on this, or the annual return, is 5%, and after 10 years she stops paying into this plan, and the investments continue to grow at 5% per annum thereafter. Joe, on the other hand, spends the £2,000 a year on himself for the first 10 years. I'll let you decide what it is he does with it. He starts then saving into his account at the age of 32 and invests £2,000 a year for the next 34 years at a 5% return. So as you can see, looking at the red line on the graph on the right hand side, you know, by the age of 65, Joe's investment is worth 178,640, but the actual cost to him for that kind of final value is an investment of 68,000. Now, on the other hand, when we look at kind of Sarah's chart, which, albeit that there's less in the pot at that point, when we get to age 65, her plan is worth 138,760. But the key point here is that that cost, in terms of the investment cost, is 20,000 at that point. So it really does show you the benefit of you know, investing early and really having those funds, you know, invested for the longer term to grow year on year, as this graph denotes. Next slide, please. So in terms of the options we've got then to look at investments, there are really many investment vehicles that we've got access to at Schroders Personal Wealth. Now one of those, just to give you a bit of an idea, is ISAs, or otherwise known as individual savings accounts. Now, they come across quite a broad range in terms of cash ISAs, so those that work more similarly to savings. Stocks and shares ISA, where they can be invested you know, in a broad investment landscape. Lifetime ISAs, help to buy ISAs, junior ISAs, and innovative finance ISAs as well. So there's a real range of them that are available. And of course, the benefit here with ISAs is that, you know, any investment returns or any interest, if it's held in savings, are free of income and capital gains tax as well. So, you know, they really can be a powerful tool to tax efficiently help to, you know, to grow wealth in the long run, and of course help to achieve clients' objectives, whatever they might be. So that's kind of my little bit there, just on covering financial protection and really the importance of it in any financial plan. A little kind of look at saving versus investing and some of the kind of basic level overview on that front. The importance of starting early with compound investing in practice, and how that can really help to grow wealth over the long run. And I'm now going to hand back over to James, who's going to tell you a little bit more about investing in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So here at Schroders Personal Wealth, we're what's known as discretionary fund managers, which means we make ongoing investment decisions for our clients based on what your outlook and level of experience and knowledge is regarding investing and the risk approach that you want to be taking. We have a range of model portfolios that we invest for clients. We have 10 portfolios currently at the moment across 2 different types of investment. What Chris spoke about there was the tax efficient wrappers that you can invest in. There are ISAs. There's also your pensions and a variety of other tax wrappers that you can invest in. Our investment approach here at Schroders Personal Wealth focuses on really 5 main areas. First one, as I mentioned, is understanding risk and reward. So we complete a risk questionnaire with our clients, which gives us an indication of what their outlook is. And then we explore, based on what their previous experience and understanding is, what their tolerance is, what their capacity to take investment risk is, and whether they are willing to be taking some investment risk. A lot of people understand the need to take some risk in terms to get a better reward. When we invest for clients, we very much focus on the long term. Okay, we look at a minimum time horizon of 5 years, but really looking out to 10 years for investing. And the reason being is because if you're looking at a sort of 5 to 10 year period, it's going to give you a better chance to grow your money than potentially the risk of just investing for that specific, for say just a 12-month period, because then you are susceptible for the movements in the stock market. And we've experienced a really volatile year in 2022, not just in the stock market, but in a variety of other investment markets, whether it's the bond market, whether it's the property market, to what we're seeing at the moment. So our main focus is long term, and we do believe if we get the right, what's known as asset allocation, so spread of assets in an investment, and we invest for the long term, it's going to produce around about 80% of those returns over that 10-year period. Now, if you invest for 10 years, sort of data has showed us that 99 times out of 100 you are going to outperform cash in your position. Okay, so the data shows that it is, for a long-term standpoint, it's the better opportunity to get that money working harder for you. We do focus on the long term, but we very much focus on the short term in terms of maximizing opportunities. There are a lot of situations happening geopolitically and globally at the moment, which gives us opportunity as investors to dip into certain geographical areas in terms of financial sectors and markets when an opportunity presents itself. And we use our specialist expertise to be able to do that. We work closely with our strategic partner, Schroders. They're one of the largest UK investment firms. They're not just a UK investment firm, though. They have 48 offices globally. So they have feet on the ground in all of the economies, really, that we're going to be investing for our clients. So they have a really great knowledge of these markets and what's happening there. So being able to draw from that expertise and putting our investments together is really, really crucial. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, holding a broad spread of investments is key. For the most part, over the last 10, 15, 20 years, having a broad spread of investments helps limit the volatility within an underlying investment, and also helps produce longer term growth. Why is diversification important? Usually because if certain things are happening in the stock market or in the world, investors do and act accordingly. So over the last 10, 11 years, if investments, stock markets are volatile and performing badly, investors tend to run to safe havens. Safe havens are usually in the investment bond market. So these are where investors loan monies to corporates, so companies, there's also as well as countries and central banks. So when the volatility is there in the stock market, they can go and get the returns, and it boosts the stock market. So by having some bonds and some equities in an investment portfolio, it can move accordingly and up and down, and hopefully limit that diversity. We hold, as I mentioned, a broad spread of assets. We are not a UK-based investment. We are really a global portfolio. We have world equity, we have which makes up around about 60% of the equity content within our portfolios. Equity is shares, so investing in companies. We have money in property, commodities, gilts, elements in gold and cash. And the importance of having that spread of assets is as I mentioned earlier, to really kind of limit that volatility where possible. We are in a very, very unusual time at the moment. What happened at the start of the year with the terrible situation happening in Ukraine and all of the global effects from that, it's meant that the stock markets have become really volatile, as we know, because of the uncertainty in the world. It's also pushed the value of and the cost of living up. So inflation has really shot up this year. which, as we can all see, whether it's our energy bills, because there is the demand but not the supply of energy for us, or whether it's the cost of food, for instance, going up, two of the biggest factors in inflation. Now, with inflation being really high, central banks, the people that help mitigate and manage the inflation levels in the society, have only really got one tool in order to limit and reduce that inflation, and that is the rising of interest rates. Because 80% of the UK economy alone are borrowers. So we have mortgages, we have loans, we have debt. So the rising interest rates means that more money is spent on that debt and that borrowing, which limits essentially our spending power. So we've got less money to spend on areas that we enjoy. Maybe it's on holidays, socializing, those sorts of things. So it reduces the demand in the UK, which means that hopefully prices will come down with it. Now, the issue in terms of investing and what's happened over the last sort of 10 months is because interest rates have risen really quickly. The value of the bonds that are in the bond market have diminished, because bonds provide a yield, like a coupon, so it's like an interest rate, better than what you would get in a bank, but that yield becomes less attractive to investors. So the bond market has fallen significantly. It's been the worst year in the bond market in the last 20 years. Alongside that, the stock market has fallen. So you're probably looking at your pensions at the moment and you're seeing significant falls. And that's because the majority of the assets within it have fallen in real terms this year. So it is a concern. However, there are signs of growth globally, which is going to be subdued somewhat, but it is going to be there over the coming years. We expect here at Schroders Personal Wealth inflation to peak in and around the end of Q1 next year, and start to taper down towards the latter end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024 to the usual assumptive levels of around about 2%. But obviously over that course of time, it is a real challenge to you. When clients are looking at investing, there are a range of emotions that you would feel, and it's all based on a business cycle. So there are boom and bust periods. The business cycle is usually anywhere between sort of 7 and 10 years. Unfortunately, over the last 3 years, we've had two essentially sort of bear markets and bust years. And the reason being is obviously this year with the war with Ukraine, but also the situation that happened with COVID. So it really is a scary, unusual time, and it doesn't usually happen this way. But what we can look back on is history, and we can see that markets do go up and down. When a client invests initially, there is a level of optimism and excitement because they're really putting towards their future, and you would be looking, sort of preparing yourself for retirement or saving for a specific goal 5 or 10 years down the line. When you start to see that investment go up, there's thrill, there's euphoria. When there are economic hard times and stock markets and investments start to falter, that's when you start to feel indifferent about the investments. And initially there's an element of anxiety. Then you start to deny the fact that your investments are going down. And then as you can see the gradual decline of your underlying investments, and potentially at this stage your pensions, start to get into panic and desperation mode. We are close to the bottom now. There's still possibilities that markets fall further, but we're very much close to the bottom of the right now. It's actually a really good time to be investing and putting some of your capital to the future, because prices are low and we do know that it will rebound. Warren Buffett had a really good saying: you should be fearful when people are looking or excited about the stock markets, and when people are sort of nervous of the stock markets and fearful of the stock markets, you should be looking to maximize those opportunities. And it's really from now, we should hopefully see over the coming years, and however long it takes when you get to know, but we should start to see more hope. And then over time, your investments will rebound, and then the relief and the optimism will come, and we go back across that trajectory of the bear and the bull markets that are happening with the economic situations. Now, I'm going to pass across to Rebecca now to talk about what support that you have available in terms of speaking with myself and Chris and the advisors that are covering the Bristol area. Rebecca, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you, James. I hope that you find that that's quite a useful overview. Obviously, we can't go into too much depth, but James very nicely highlighted the main sort of elements there. And as I said, it's all about practicalities and sort of takeaways. The support we offer on top of this is, as ever with us, important to get that financial plan in place. So it's a free financial health check, that initial chat with an advisor, either James or Chris, that is available to you if you'd like to take that up. Absolutely no cost at all to that. And there's no cost to the report they develop for you either. That is absolutely no obligation and yours to have. There will be a fee and a charge if you decide to go forward on those recommendations, but you can chat to the advisor about that. We have a wealth lens, we have our webinar series, we've got all sorts of resources, and we've got a lot of different partners that we can go to if we want to answer questions that you have at your sessions. We have got a series of events coming up. We've got Talk Money Week, 7th to 11th of November. There's several different seminars every day. We've also got a big inflation campaign that is about to start. And that again is informative and gives you a really, really good scope of information if you wanted to ask any questions and get involved. And then Q&A, if you wanted to ask those in a second. If you want to get hold of us, here are our details. If you want to book in to see James or Chris, give me a shout, drop me a line, and I will arrange that for you. And it's been a great pleasure to be with you today, and I'll end there. Thank you, Roisin. Over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's wonderful. I actually learned quite a lot there. I've been to these talks before. There's always something new to pick up on, and I think it depends on what you're doing in your own life at the time. I think it shines a bit of a light on the fact that even if you think you are being smart, there's always more information and more things you could be considering. So it really highlights the value of the service you provide. So thank you for that. Perhaps I could start with the question that we had submitted in advance. I think, James, you might be able to help with this, and there's probably a slide towards the beginning that sort of answered this, but do you have any good starting point sort of resources or tips for investing spare income? So I think you kind of covered that towards the beginning where you said priority one, building up a bit of a safety net for yourself, and then just identifying what your spare income is. Does that cover that, or do you have anything else you'd like to add to that?
Very much that. I think get your cash position in that will cover any kind of needs and emergencies over the next sort of 2, 3, 4 years. And then if there is spare surplus income at the moment, work out potentially what you want to save for the next maybe 5, 10, 15 years that you can access. And then if there's any money that you feel that you can put away longer term, that's when you really start to direct that to your pensions. If you've got surplus income that you want to be investing in the short term, there are a number of resources available. We could potentially help here, but there's also online apps that you can use from an investment standpoint that will talk about sort of different levels of risk that you can be willing to take. Obviously, the consideration to be is if you are going to be looking at investing, do look at the longer term. Don't feel that you are going to necessarily get that money working really hard over the next 6 to 12 months, because it might not happen that way, and you really need to take a longer term view with it. Feel free, that person, whoever's asked that question, to reach out and we can have a bit more of an in-depth conversation about potential investments. We can look at that.
Brilliant. Probably again one for James or Chris here, but if someone wanted to come and see you to talk about these sorts of things, what would it be helpful for them to prepare in advance or to bring with them? Chris?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I think really our kind of initial meetings are all about understanding our clients and the person sat in front of us. So, you know, an understanding of any kind of objectives, any plans for the future, that's always really helpful. And actually, I'm guilty of this, I'm sure, as James and Rebecca also. So busy day to day, you don't actually ever really sit down and think about the longer term. So I think really the first meeting is a discovery around, you know, where you'd like to get to. But also we will, of course, cover off what's in place at the moment to support with those objectives in the long run. So any existing pensions, any existing insurance policies, income, that sort of stuff, and expenses really allow us then to look into the detail when we kind of produce the financial plan to be clear on where we need to get to, what we've got in place at the moment to support it, but also then anything else we can do over and above that to to get the plan on track. So I think that's probably quite a clear overview. James, I don't know if there's anything else to add from your experience, but I think that's probably about it.
No, I think you succinctly put that, Chris.
Thank you. Rebecca, what could we hope to learn from Talk Money Week?
Talk Money Week was set up some time ago, and it's the same time every year. It's in November, it's 7th to 11th of November. And we throw ourselves fully at it because it addresses all the issues that are affecting everybody at whatever stage they're at. So we kick off with some lovely foundations around financial planning. We've got day-to-day finances, and then we move right through getting more complex and more sort of chunky in topic, if you like, to the end of the week. So we have saving and investing for the future. So some of the things that you've seen today will be in a much wider and more in-depth seminar. We look at planning and managing for retirement. That is a big, big topic. So again, even if you think you need to be thinking about retirement, have a look at that one, and passing on your wealth, which is the final one. So I have sent all the links, and the links will be available for everybody to book in. They are national events, so you can book in, and there's resources around those as well. We've also got a big inflation campaign as well, where there's major panel sessions, discussions, resources, all the things that we generate for you to help to understand those things better.
Thank you. In terms of sort of who you help and whether there's a threshold for that, do you sort of look for someone to have a minimum income or be projected to have that? Is there sort of, something that, some of our attendees might be trainee solicitors, so they might be waiting until they are a qualified solicitor to come and see you, and maybe with a certain salary or salary expectation?
I'm not an advisor myself, but I would say from that point, looking at it, I would say that the point about having a financial plan is it looks after everybody wherever you are. And it gives you that look through. If you don't, we don't have criteria where you can only come and see us if you earn a certain amount or whatever. The advisors are experienced enough to be able to give you enough foundation. And there's downloadable resources where in their pragmatic conversation with you, where the way forward with an advisor might not be the thing at this moment, but there's downloadable resources that can be used, and you can keep yourself in plan along a certain route, and then check in with the advisor at some point. It's absolutely fine. And if you want to discuss any issues, then book in with an advisor, and the advisor will be able to sort it through with you. Am I right in saying that, James, Chris? I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, definitely. And it may be a case if we just sit down and have a 30-minute conversation about really what you should be focusing on over the next couple of years until your wealth starts to build. And it might not necessarily mean a report. It might not necessarily mean a detailed financial plan, but I'm sure that I can give you all individual guidance as to what you should and shouldn't be doing. And like Chris said, if you just come to the conversations with your position, and it might be a case of you don't understand where your pension's invested, for instance, and we can discuss and talk about what's best for that for you within your company pension scheme. So there's lots of value that can be added even if we don't put necessarily a concrete plan together. So don't sit there today and feel that you don't meet criteria or you're not really eligible or worthwhile us talking to. At the end of the day, we're sat here in front of you because we want to give you the ability to talk about your finances. Yeah,
absolutely. Obviously, if there are any more Q&As, please do add them to the Q&A box or the chat box. Yeah, I think that's a really lovely way to end things, because I think just giving people the confidence to have the conversations, and I assume that's what Talk Money Week is about as well, just giving people the confidence to engage in what can be an awkward topic or an uncomfortable topic or something you think you really should know more about and you don't. As I said, I've learned quite a lot from the slides today, and I think others will probably be feeling the same. So it's a case of, educating ourselves, and if we need help with that, that's okay, and encouraged, actually, because we're competing with these difficult markets and we're not the experts in that, and we're paid to be experts in other fields, not in this one. So yeah, that's fantastic. And just to say to our attendees, you know, we've put on this webinar for you today actually aimed at juniors in the profession, and Schroders do really care about you at this early stage, as well as, you know, the later stages where there might be more varied things that they can do for you. There's still a lot that they can do for you now. So thank you very much for attending. I don't have any more questions in the Q&A. So just if we could put that slide back up with everybody's contact details just for a few moments, that would be good. BLS are running a series of these lunch and learn webinars aimed at juniors. I don't know what the practice areas are of those attending today, but just to let you know, we've got one quite relevant to conveyancing solicitors next week, which is on drainage and water searches. You can sign up for that by just checking the BLS website, but there's also been some emails that have come out about that. And just keep an eye on the BLS LinkedIn page and your emails for future events. Just want to say a really thank you. Just want to say a really big thank you to Rebecca, James and Chris for joining us today and giving up their time, and for any future time you give up to advise us on our financial future. So thank you very much.
No, thank you.